When I was cleaning my husband's car, I found a tube of intimate lubricant under the seat. I didn't say anything, I just silently replaced it with a tube of industrial glue. What happened next made the neighbors call an ambulance. I sat in my husband's car and felt around in the glove compartment until I found a tube of intimate gel. I didn't say anything, I silently swapped it for industrial superglue. And then something happened that made the neighbors panic and call the fire department. I'm glad you're here with me. If you're watching this video, like it, subscribe, and write in the comments which city you're listening from. I want to see how far this story has reached. I was sitting at the kitchen table. The silence in the house was thick, like morning fog. It had already become an uninvited guest, living there day and night. The old clock on the wall, a wedding gift from my mother, ticked not just randomly, it seemed reproachful, as if every tick reminded me of a life I increasingly suspected was beautiful only in carefully crafted, deceptive details. Roger had just returned from another business dinner. He didn't just look tired, he looked hunted, like someone carrying a secret too heavy to bear. His face was lined with fatigue and guilt that hadn't been there before. He threw his jacket onto the sofa as if to show how miserable he was. He loosened his tie like it was a noose he wanted to get rid of quickly and flopped onto the bed without even showering. The springs creaked as usual. His expensive cologne hung in the air, but it was mixed with a foreign sweet scent, not mine, not a man's. Like a brazen note left on my desk. After a few minutes, his steady, even snoring began. Once, this sound would have been comforting, now it stirred anger, like a lullaby for a fool. I got up calmly, as a woman who has spent 40 years in a marriage would, and began picking up everything he had thrown in the living room, his jacket, wallet, phone, and old laptop. The phone screen was still lit. A new message glowed like a bad omen. I frowned. He rarely uses email and always grumbled, "Roger, forget this tech, I'll just call." But here was a message in plain sight, like an accidentally opened door into a life that had been hidden from me. Curiosity was ugly yet inevitable. I opened it. There were just a few words that shattered my world. "You were incredible today, Dad," followed by a red heart, like an icy needle to the chest. I froze as if slapped. Dad, who calls him that? And why in such a tender, almost intimate tone? I scrolled down. My thumb trembled. Nothing else, no correspondence, no trail. Just a strange address, a string of letters and numbers that made no sense. A shiver ran down my spine, from a dull, bony fear. As if a crack had opened in my life, and a cold draft of someone else's secrets was blowing through. I looked toward the bedroom. He had turned over and snuffled. His face was peaceful, like a baby's, and that calmness seemed to twist me inside. My heart pounded like a thief's. I quickly put the phone back. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped it. From then on, I moved like a robot. I gathered his dirty laundry. In the pockets of his pants, I found a crisp folded receipt, new, still smelling of paper. A steakhouse in downtown Boston. Date, tonight. I smiled grimly. He had said he was meeting partners in Washington. He hates driving there. And Boston used to be where his mother lived. He had fondly remembered those years more than once. But who was he having dinner with in Boston when he claimed he was in Washington? The receipt showed a table for two, a bottle of expensive Cabernet, the same one he had once bought me for our 10th anniversary, and a hot filet, and pasta. I tried to remember the last time he had taken me out in public. It must have been 10 years ago, when I opened my first bakery. I remember the plate trembling from the candlelight, his smile. I was proud as he toasted with me to our future. Now that memory sat like a splinter. Turns out, even it was a lie. I took out my phone and silently photographed the receipt and the message screen. I didn't want to believe it, but a 40-year-old wife's intuition is like that of an old beast, it doesn't lie. Something was happening, and I needed to know. My hands shook not just from anger but from the feeling of standing on the edge of a cliff, about to see my life, everything I had built, collapse. I went down to the garage. His SUV was still warm. The cabin smelled of gasoline and that same sweet scent lingering on his clothes. I turned on a flashlight and checked the driver's seat. Small stuff, an empty bottle. I opened the glove compartment on the passenger side. My fingers touched slick plastic. I pulled out the tube. My heart lurched. An intimate gel, used, with dried traces around the cap. In the dark garage, I stood looking at it like a dirty secret you could touch. We hadn't been close for years. He kept saying he was tired, that at his age, it wasn't for him. Then who is it for? I put everything back exactly as it had been, millimeter by millimeter, and wiped my hands with a napkin until they burned, as if afraid that the betrayal would sink into my skin. I continued the search, calmer now, more attentive. Under the back seat, crumpled tissues, smelling of the same sweet, foreign scent. Not my husband's, not mine, soft, pink. The smell was brazen, predatory, like the cry of infidelity in the silence of the garage. I photographed everything with my phone, the tube, the tissues, as if I wanted to trap the scent in frames. I closed the car and went back into the house. The weight of the evidence pressed harder than a sack of flour I once carried while opening the bakery. I picked up his phone again. The chats were dry, work-related. A desert. No incoming or outgoing messages. Only that strange email. Drafts empty. Too clean, too neat. Suspicious. As if the traces had been swept away. Master of lies, I thought. Anger had cooled, becoming a heavy stone in my chest. In its place rose something no less dangerous, a thirst for truth, a need to lift the veil, no matter the cost. In the morning, as soon as the gray light filtered through the curtain, I was already on my feet. Like a ghost in my own house. The tube, the receipt, and that dad in the red heart kept spinning in my mind. Everything revolved like a carousel with poisonous smoke. I fried 2 eggs, warmed the toast, poured strong black coffee. He likes it that way. I had barely slept all night. He came down, rumpled. Hair sticking up, eyes cloudy. He sat, sipped the coffee, and set the cup aside half full. I have an important meeting today, he said hoarsely, without meeting my eyes. I'll be late. He delivered it like clockwork, a little lie, his habitual tone. I caught my breath from anger but only nodded and, as always, softly said, "Okay. Take care of yourself." He stood, patted me on the shoulder, an empty gesture, not affection, and left. The door closed, and the kitchen became so quiet again that the ticking of the clock was loud. I washed the dishes one by one. The rhythm of chores somehow kept me afloat. Sitting and spinning guesses was no longer possible. I needed the truth, solid, like stone. I found Dolores in my contacts. When I first opened the bakery, she had helped me a lot. Once she said, "If, God forbid, you ever need it, I have a reliable private detective." Very discreet. His name's George. I had brushed it off back then, but now I realized there was no other way. I called her. My voice trembled. Each ring hit my nerves. "Roger, what happened? Did Roger do something?" I sighed, not wanting to spill my pain over the phone. "I need the truth." "Can you help?" Dolores, a quiet woman but quick to understand, agreed immediately. An hour later, a message from George arrived. "Let's meet at noon in a small cafe downtown." "Don't worry, I'll help." By noon, I was already sitting by the window. The tables were worn, the smell of freshly ground coffee. Usually it calmed me, but today, it felt foreign. I chose a corner where no one knew me. I wanted to be a shadow in the light. George came in. Short, stocky, in a light blue shirt, with thoughtful eyes that seemed to see deeper than necessary. I handed him the flash drive with the photos I had taken that night, the email, the receipt, the tube, the tissues. "This is all I have," I said, my voice trembling. "I think he's cheating." The words were bitter, like burnt sugar. He nodded, calmly flipped through the pictures, making brief notes in his notebook. "Understood, Linda. I'll start surveillance today. Hang in there. I'll let you know as soon as there's something concrete." I nodded, holding back the tears rising inside me. "I want to know the truth. Whatever it is." He looked at me humanly, without extra words. "I'll do everything I can. You will go home. And not a single unnecessary move, so as not to raise suspicion." I stepped out of the cafe and walked through the crowd, moving as if over water. People flowed past, talking, laughing, living. And I walked alone, feeling for the first time in 40 years of marriage that I was not a wife, not the mistress of the house, but a person whose ground had given way beneath her feet. In the evening, my phone vibrated. A message from George. A short phrase, "See attachments and photos." The first image showed Roger in his favorite light blue shirt entering an upscale downtown restaurant, holding a woman's hand. I zoomed in, and my insides froze. It was Catherine, my daughter-in-law. They walked close, not like relatives, but like a couple with their own secrets. More shots came in. At their table, candles and a small vase of flowers. Catherine leaned toward him, smiling, and he clinked glasses with her, looking so gently, so warmly, a look he hadn't given me in many years. I stared at the screen as if peering into a pit. Once, in our youth in Los Angeles, he had looked at me that way. Now, at her. At exactly 2 a.m. A video arrived. I put on headphones. My hands trembled so badly I almost dropped the phone. In the recording, Catherine leans toward his ear, whispering something. He laughs, a foreign laugh, one I had never known from him. Then they leave, and Roger, like a gentleman, opens her car door, as if she were his love. I rewound and replayed it again and again, torturing myself each time like a fresh sting. The next morning brought another batch. Photos. He, in his gray shirt, leaving a law office by the central square. Next to him, Catherine, beige office dress, high ponytail, large black sunglasses, as if hiding. They walked too close, their bodies betraying their connection. Next shot, a 4-star hotel, glass doors, golden sign. I zoomed in, hoping to see a contradiction, any detail to save me. Nothing. Too natural, too comfortable for them together. Then a short video, taken from afar, 3rd floor, balcony. His hand rests on her waist. Her head leans on his shoulder. The wind moves her hair. And a quick, almost imperceptible kiss. But it was enough for me to burn the last remnants of hope. Immediately, a message from George. The room is booked for the day. Looks like they're staying the night. Keeping them in sight. I reread it. And his evening words flashed in my mind. Roger, I won't be home tonight. Meeting a visiting partner. Relax. Smooth voice, caring tone, and a lie polished over years. I opened the flash drive and, like on an assembly line, saved every photo, every video. I labeled dates, times, locations, even the restaurant name. I stared at each frame, checking every time if it was a dream. Inside, I felt empty. Only burning shame and anger. I remembered family evenings, the shared table. Catherine sitting away from Roger, looking almost resentful. Marcus joked. Mom, I think Catherine can't stand Dad, she avoids him. I believed it too. And now I saw the performance. They played it too well, in front of me, in front of our son, in front of the whole neighborhood. I wrote to George. Thank you. Please continue. I need to know everything. He replied briefly, I will. Hang in there. By nightfall, I returned home. Silence in the hallway. I could hear air tapping in the radiator. I took out the printer and printed everything as it was, without extras. I folded the photos and prints into a sturdy envelope, sealed it, wrote the date, and hid it at the bottom of the dresser, under old family photographs. I took one from the top. The four of us at Marcus's birthday. Catherine hugging our son. Roger standing beside me, his hand on my shoulder. Face content, calm. I clenched the photograph so hard the frame cracked. I wanted to tear it, but I only put it back. Everything in its time. Just before dawn, the door quietly clicked. He returned. He entered quietly, early morning, smelling of alcohol and speaking with a weary complaint. The partner was tough, Roger. Had to drink a lot. I'm useless. I stood in the kitchen with a glass of water, watching him play his part to the end, as if rubbing salt into an open wound. Rest, I said evenly. Work tomorrow. He nodded, walked past heavily, patted my shoulder. An empty gesture, like an empty box. Then he collapsed onto the bed. A minute later, he was already snoring, as if nothing in life had happened. The phone vibrated once I made sure he had fallen asleep. George spoke in a low voice, as if someone might be listening nearby. Linda, I recorded their conversation in the hotel parking lot. Special equipment. Sending the file. I just exhaled. Thanks. I'll wait. A minute later, the recording appeared on the screen. I put on headphones, sat at the table, staring at the tablecloth's pattern so I wouldn't spill my hands. At first, Catherine's voice, cold, businesslike, foreign. Dad, let's just get these papers over with. I need the entire store chain. I want that old woman out of the house. My heart hit my ribs so hard I clenched the phone until it hurt. Then Roger's voice, steady, too confident. Don't worry, I'll handle the documents. Roger doesn't know anything. She trusts me. I stopped the recording, played it again, stopped it again, as if a word could somehow become different. But they were the same. Direct, like a knife. I copied the audio to a flash drive, noting the time and place. Carefully, like in a notebook, so as not to mix up the most important details. At dawn, I was already in the bakery. The dough had risen, the ovens were humming, the smell of vanilla in the air. And inside me, there was emptiness. Hollow, like an unheated warehouse. By midday, a new batch of files came from George. Long lens shots. Footage from the car. Roger at the wheel. Catherine had a stack of papers on her lap. She was marking something with a red pen. He nodded, smiled. Message. Heard a fragment. Looks like they want to process it through a contact at a notary's office. Checking. I zoomed in on the photo until it was grainy. The letters blurred, but the meaning was clear enough. I turned off the screen, sat silently, then played the audio again. Word by word, like stones in a sack. Old woman. That's what they call me behind my back now. And yet I had welcomed her into the house like a daughter. Taught her how not to burn caramel for cream, how to talk to suppliers to get a discount. The door jingled. Viola entered, a regular customer, buying tea treats for her grandchildren. Linda, your place has been packed lately, you can't catch a breath. The chain's growing. Smart girl, she said warmly. I smiled without letting my face crack. Wrapped a pastry for her, walked her to the door. And again I pressed my palms to the counter. Hold on. Don't fall. In the evening, we sat across from each other in our tiny kitchen. The yellow lamp stretched his face, making him look strange, unfamiliar. He ate, spoke evenly, as if nothing around us was falling apart. Some papers will need signing during the week. Complicated. Maybe you'll take a look? You're strong with contracts. I looked up at him and heard Catherine in my head, Dad, let's just get these papers over with. He was feeling the ground, trying to pull me into his filth. I'll look later, I yawned on purpose. I'm tired now. He shrugged, poured himself more wine. His cheeks flushed red, speech slurred. Just like always, when he thinks everything is going according to plan. He finished the glass. Got up. Went to the bedroom, leaving the car keys on the nightstand. They gleamed in the lamplight, like a sign. I cleared the table slowly, to calm my hands. Waited until the snoring evened out, then tiptoed into the bedroom. Keys in hand. Corridor, quieter than water. The garage was cool. It smelled of gasoline and that sweet, foreign scent. I opened the car, clicked on my phone's flashlight, and pulled the glove compartment. The tube was where it belonged. The cap was slightly dried around the edge, like yesterday's. I picked it up between two fingers, as you pick up something sticky, ugly, and carried it to the kitchen. The lemon soap didn't cut through the cold inside, but my hands needed to be brought back to life. From the drawer, a transparent industrial glue. The same one I once used to fix a chair leg. I unscrewed it. Drop by drop I poured, wiped the nozzle, pressed slightly. It flowed smoothly, soft, indistinguishable at a glance. A light shiver ran down my spine. This was no longer their toy, it was my trap. I returned the tube to its place, straightened the mat. Seats, back in their grooves, so not a speck of foreign dust remained. I opened the trunk. Bags. An empty bottle. In the corner, a sealed condom lay. Silently, I lifted my phone, snapped a photo, closed it, got up, and placed the keys next to his alarm clock. Everything as it had been. I sat in the living room with a book. The pages blurred, but I looked perfectly at home. He came out for water, sleepy. Not asleep? Reading, I answered, without looking up. He drank and collapsed back into bed. And I listened to his breathing even out, realizing there was no turning back. At dawn, I got up earlier than usual. Ahead was a day in which I had to smile at customers, sign invoices, and pretend that everything was as always. And in the evening, I had to take another step, after which the truth could no longer be hidden under any sheets. In the morning, I returned from the bakery for breakfast, keeping my face calm. He was already standing with a cup of black coffee, as if he hadn't gone anywhere during the night. I served eggs and toast and said evenly, without emphasis, "Roger, I need to go to Atlanta tomorrow to sign a contract. I'll be back late. You'll manage dinner yourself." He looked up, pretending to be surprised, and in his pupils flashed not worry, but relief, as if a stone had been lifted from his chest. "Big contract?" He stretched, taking my hand gently, too properly. "Go, I'll manage everything." I nodded. "I'll call if I'm delayed." He took another sip, got ready to leave, and then the screen on the table lit up. Missed call. The name appeared clearly, Catherine. He came back, grabbed the phone quickly, turned off the screen. "Oh, forgot," and disappeared into the hallway. I stayed, staring at the closed door, like at a slap, no longer hiding even the traces. I worked through the day like clockwork, invoices, calls, smiles. Head clear, hands doing their job. Inside me, the wasteland. In the evening, I announced in advance, "I'll go to bed early, bus at dawn." He nodded indifferently, affectionately, as always, when it suited him. I hid in the bedroom but didn't sleep. I listened to every rustle. Close to midnight, the snoring ceased. The mattress creaked quietly. Through the curtain slit, I saw him, in the dark by the window, dialing a number. Phone at his cheek, whispering, "Of course, come home tomorrow, we won't go to the hotel anymore. Roger will leave to sign and return late." In response, a quiet giggle. "That same, sweet one. Okay, Dad. Finally, we'll rest." He laughed the way he used to laugh. Only now it was someone else's laugh. Not for me. I returned to the bedroom and opened the drawer. Inside lay an old recorder, the one I had bought him for school, for lectures. I replaced the batteries, turned on continuous recording, and hid it behind the bookshelf by the headboard. Covered the cable with a family photo, our four at their wedding. I looked at their happy faces. A knife through my insides. I turned the frame so the wire wouldn't be visible. Checked that it was recording. Lay down quietly. I wasn't going to sleep. I got up at 5 in the morning, when only rare headlights cut through the darkness outside. In the kitchen, I set a pan with oil, checked the weak flame, and my simple smoke trap. I ran a thin ignition thread to the slightly open window and secured it so that one move could set the flame. But I left everything off. A single test puff. Thick, black smoke rose in a snake. I immediately extinguished it and made sure there were no traces. I put on my jacket, grabbed a large bag, and returned to the bedroom. Touched his shoulder lightly with a hint of fear. I'm going to the bus station to sign a contract. I'll be back late. He didn't turn his head. Be careful. Call if anything. I looked at this man I had lived with for so many years and knew there was no turning back. I didn't take any bus. I crossed the street to Viola's. She opened immediately, in a robe, worry in her eyes. Roger, what happened? I smiled wearily. Can I sit with you a bit? I want to check on the house. She didn't ask extra questions, set the kettle on, led me to the window from which my building was visible like in the palm of my hand. Sit. Coffee strong. I nodded and settled by the glass, holding the cup with both hands so they wouldn't shake. By 10, a taxi arrived. Catherine stepped out in a light floral dress and large dark glasses, as if hiding from the neighbors. Roger flung the door open, glanced around, and pulled her into the apartment, hurrying, as if out of the rain. I quietly opened the app on my phone, which linked to the recorder in the bedroom. Sound came through. Their laughter, clinking glasses, heavy steps on the parquet, then sounds I didn't want to hear, but did. I clenched my teeth, inhaled through my nose, and told myself, just a little more, Roger. Just a little more. Minutes later, Catherine squealed. At first high-pitched, then breaking. What is this? I can't. We're stuck. Roger hissed through his teeth. Quiet. Don't scream. Now. But panic had already begun, muffled moans, springy slaps, flurry of movement. I lowered my gaze to my hands and nudged the thread with my finger. The pre-laid end was tied in a loop at the window. One sharp tug was enough. A tiny flame flared in my kitchen. The oil in the pan caught fire, and black smoke poured from the crack, thick, sticky, like tar. Viola gasped, leaning toward the window. Roger, smoke's coming from your kitchen. I feigned confusion. My God, what's going on? The courtyard door slammed. People poured onto balconies and into the entrance, shouting, "Smoke at Linda's." Call 911. Leon, our neighbor, was already dialing. Fire department? Address such and such. Kitchen is smoking. Possibly people inside. I stood next to Viola, fingers gripping my cup until my knuckles whitened. But inside, I was calm, as if taking an exam I had studied for all night. In the headphones, the chaos intensified. Catherine was almost crying. Do something. It hurts. Roger growled. Shut up. Don't move. Endure. But there was nothing left for them to endure. Their trap had closed. Meanwhile, smoke billowed through the courtyard. People crowded at the entrance. Someone was already running to the intercom, someone else trying to shout at the door. Outside, a siren wailed. At first, distant, a thin thread of sound. Then closer, louder, until the red vehicle turned toward our building. The car screeched to a stop at the entrance. The driver's door flew open, and I saw my son leap from the cabin in uniform. Helmet in hand, face stone-like, focused. In that moment, I realized he was about to enter the apartment that had been our home and see not what every firefighter is prepared for, but what no one is prepared for. Marcus was the first to step into the entrance, clutching his helmet under his arm, waving briefly to the others. "Follow me." A second later, the doorframe cracked under a sledgehammer. Wood splintered, chips scattered across the floor. Air rushed into the apartment, and people in uniform followed. One headed to the kitchen to shut off the gas and check the fire source. Two went down the corridor toward the bedroom. Through the earpiece, I heard continuous noise, thuds, commands, heavy breathing. Then a sudden pause. And my son's voice, hoarse, like someone who had lost his footing. "What is this?" Behind him, a muffled, "Quiet. Everyone stay silent." And then matter of fact, professionally, "Bring sheets. Everyone else leave the room. Quickly." Outside, people crowded the entrance. Some craned their necks, some covered their mouths with their hands. I saw Viola, without a word, lift her phone and turn on the camera. In her eyes, anger and pity, the kind that cannot be mistaken for anything else. "They say there are people inside. My God, where's Roger?" "He went to work, right?" Whispers merged into a single murmur. Leon waved the young firefighters back. "Step aside, don't interfere." The siren drowned out the courtyard. Windows trembled. My home had, in an instant, become a stage no one had bought tickets for. From the bedroom came, "Hold on. Don't move. Carefully now." And a short, female sob. Then the firefighters carried 2 sheets, stretching them like screens. I only caught the edge of my eye as, beneath the white fabric, 2 entangled figures moved. Marcus, without looking at anyone, stepped aside, clenched his fists, and muttered, "Quickly onto the stretcher." No photos. But it was already too late. Someone's phone hadn't been lowered. The fire in the kitchen was put out in a couple of minutes. The oil was extinguished. They turned off the exhaust, threw the window wide open, and the black smoke surrendered, turning into a gray streak that melted into the sky. Down below, our people, covering them with sheets, were carrying them to the ambulance. Catherine whimpered, breaking into sobs. "Do something. It hurts." Linda rasped, "Don't look." But the whole yard had already seen. In the crowd, someone couldn't hold back and snorted nervously, but Marcus barked sharply, "Silence!" And it was a shout not only of the boss but also of a son who holds the world from falling apart, at least with his voice. They loaded them into the ambulance, the doors slammed, the siren wailed, and the white vehicle carried away that shameful scene across the yard, leaving wet traces and whispers on the asphalt. I, standing by Viola's window, took a deep breath and only then allowed myself to look away from the entrance. Viola pressed her palm to my shoulder. "Let's go. We need to be there." I nodded. Someone outside had already spoken aloud what we all were thinking. Poor Marcus. I lowered my eyes and, as if suddenly realizing, walked quickly, like a woman who just received a call, "There's smoke in your house." The hospital corridor smelled of bleach and coffee from the vending machine. Viola and I sat on the 3rd floor under a sign that read Emergency Department. I held my bag with both hands and wore a worried but composed expression, like a wife called in just in case. Time dragged messily, the minute hand skipped divisions. Finally, a tall, sweaty doctor came out, removed his mask, and looked at me with that very sympathy you fear. They separated them. No serious injuries. Mostly fright, superficial burns. They need ointment, care, and rest. I nodded as if exhaling. "Can I see them?" "In about 10 minutes. The nurse will give you the ointment." At the station, a young nurse with a ponytail and dark circles under her eyes pulled 2 tubes from a drawer and placed them on the table. "Here, apply a thin layer. And stay strong." I thanked her briefly, and when she turned to the phone, my hand did automatically what it had done for 40 years, quickly, precisely, without fuss. 2 white tubes went into my bag. Two others, thick and pungent like mustard, were already in the cosmetic bag. The smell was hidden under the cap, though they looked identical. I took the ointment and walked down the corridor. I could feel my heels strike the floor evenly, the emptiness and calm inside, like in a stove when everything is burned down but the walls still hold warmth. The ward was quiet. Catherine lay on her side, hair tangled, eyes red. Linda was pale, lips dry. He lifted his head. "Roger, not now," I said. I placed the tubes on the nightstand and turned to the door. Viola stayed in the corridor. I stepped out to her. We stood together by the window, and I gripped the strap of my bag to keep my hands from trembling. I lowered my gaze, counting to myself, 1, 2, 3. And the ward door silently closed behind me with the closer. The corridor was quiet, only the closer hissed, and then a scream tore through the air from the ward, so sharp my stomach clenched. "It burns, it hurts, do something." Catherine howled thinly, almost hysterically. Linda cursed hoarsely and rustled a sheet. The nurse jumped up, the doctor followed her. The doors slammed, and within a minute words ran down the corridor, the kind that always sound businesslike in hospitals. "Water. Neutralizer. Careful, don't rub." I stood by the window with Viola, holding my bag with both hands, counting my breath to keep my expression steady. People rose from the neighboring chairs, whispers spreading. They saw the morning video. "Father-in-law and daughter-in-law." I heard an older woman say to her son, "Poor guy, the firefighter. How is he now?" And something inside me trembled. Not anger, not joy, but emptiness, as if the last cup had been taken off the shelf. When the commotion settled, the doctor came out, removed his gloves, and sighed. "They've been treated. Apply the ointment and then rest," the nurse said. I nodded, as if that's all I had been waiting for. At that exact moment, my phone vibrated briefly in my pocket. One word from Marcus, "Here." Before the ambulance arrived, I had called him and asked, "Go home, get the envelope from the dresser and the documents from the bottom. They're under the family photos." He entered the hall quietly, without a helmet, holding a folder. His face was gray, like someone burned by frost. He handed me the folder. No questions, no sighs, just deep, adult eyes. I opened the folder at the nurse's station and pulled out what I had been preparing all night and for all these years without even realizing it. Photographs, by the legal office, by the hotel, on the balcony, shots from the parking lot, a printed receipt, a flash drive with a streak of red nail polish on the lid. On top, 2 sheets, a divorce petition and a property settlement agreement. I placed a pen on top too, the blue one, the same I used to sign delivery notes. I pressed the folder to keep my fingers from shaking and entered the room. Catherine had turned to the wall, her hair tangled, cheeks wet from crying. Roger lifted himself slightly and caught my gaze. "Roger, wait, let me explain." I placed the stack on the nightstand and spoke calmly, the same way I address a supplier trying to push expired stock. "There's nothing to explain. Everything is here. 40 years in today. Sign and disappear from my life and my son's life." I turned the photographs toward them. On top was the one of them on the balcony, a quick little kiss, wind in their hair. Catherine sniffled and immediately turned to me. "Please. This is a mistake." Her voice was thin, sticky, like spilled syrup. Roger reached toward me, his fingers trembling. "Roger, I beg you, don't." "Too late," I said, sliding the pen toward him. The silence in the room grew heavy, like a wet towel. The door cracked open, and Marcus stepped into the gap. He looked at the table, at the photos, the papers, the same pen. For a second, he closed his eyes, as if inhaling smoke one more time. Catherine flinched toward him. "Marcus, darling, forgive me. I was wrong." He didn't answer. His gaze shifted to his father, long, slow, and he left as quietly as he had entered. I picked up the documents from the table, nudged them closer to him, and moved around the bed so I wasn't standing between them like a notary. The corridor was cool, the lights hissed. Marcus leaned against the wall, holding the folder by its edge so it wouldn't fall, staring at the floor. I approached and placed my hand on his shoulder. He swayed slightly, like carrying a heavy sack on his back, and asked softly, almost like a boy, "Mom, why him? Why her?" I found no words. I just hugged him. And we stood like people who share one sea and one shore between them. A minute later, the door clicked, and I heard the handle squeak. Someone had reached for my blue pen. The pen squeaked like a knife on a plate, short, nervous. I heard it even through the thickness of air in the corridor and realized one stroke had already hit the paper. The room stiffened, people stirred, someone coughed. I didn't enter. I stood beside Marcus, holding his elbow, as if that could hold someone whose house and family collapsed in a single morning. The door opened. The nurse slipped in and immediately out. "Quiet, please. This is a hospital." My son and I didn't move. I stared at the white wall with its peeling edge, and a simple thought echoed in my head: move forward. From today, move forward. A minute later, Roger appeared. Pale, lips dry. In his hands, my papers, the edge of the blue pen sticking out on top. He paused in the doorway, as if still hoping to catch my gaze and find the Linda who had trusted him for 40 years. I didn't give him an inch. "Leave it at the nurse's station," I said quietly. He nodded, handed the folder to the nurse, and wanted to say, "Roger," but faltered. Catherine sobbed inside the room, and his eye twitched. Marcus stepped forward, standing between us, restrained, businesslike. "We're done. Mom needs to rest." There was no shout or plea in his voice, only the silence of someone who had seen too much fire. Roger looked away, as if noticing for the first time that in front of him was not a boy, but a man, and returned to the room. Marcus and I went down to the first floor. The coffee machine spat a thin stream into a cup, bitter as night. We sat by the window. He was silent, holding his temple with his hand. My bag rested on my lap, and I felt the crinkle of the packet with the flash drive under my fingers, the one with the red stripe on the lid. My phone vibrated, messages kept coming in the house chat. Viola's video was already circulating among the neighbors. Someone had forwarded it further, to schools, workplaces, friends. The messages were short, fragmented. "Is this true? Poor Roger. How could he?" "Mom," Marcus said suddenly, without lifting his eyes, "I'll help you at the bakery today, with the papers, with the suppliers, for a while. I don't want to go home." I nodded. "Okay. No explanations." We finished our coffee in silence, like two people who were a family of 4 yesterday and today are learning to walk again. On our way out of the hospital, I called George. "So, at the notary?" I asked calmly, as if asking about a delivery note. He replied shortly, "There are traces. The surname matches what you mentioned. I'll file the request today. We'll record the attempt. Linda, hold on. It'll be harder for them." I thanked him. In that moment, I understood clearly that revenge is only the surface. What mattered most was that everything I had built remained mine, so that hands unfamiliar with the accounts wouldn't reach into the cash register or divide my work. In the evening, Marcus and I returned home. The hallway smelled of smoke and antiseptic. I took off my coat, went to the kitchen, and sat at the table. On the stove, my black frying pan gleamed, clean to perfection. Next to it, a voice recorder. I pressed stop, carefully removed the memory card, and placed it next to the flash drive. My hand automatically reached for the top drawer, where the blue pen for the delivery notes always rests. I placed it on top of the folder, the same one that had just returned from the hospital, and took a deep breath. The house felt like a home again, even with just one window where the smell of smoke lingered. Marcus stood in the doorway, watching me, and for the first time all day, something alive, human, flickered in his gaze, not strength or anger, but the kind of exhaustion that is about to give way to determination. "Mom," he said softly, "tomorrow I'll get up early. I'll go to the hotel to check with the manager on their orders, and at 2 to the lawyer. We'll figure out the best way to file it." I nodded. "And I'll finalize the schedule at night, call the suppliers. Tomorrow, we'll live." The phone beeped. A new message from George. "Don't delay. Looks like they plan to come through a contact the day after tomorrow." I found out the surname. The screen flashed, and before I could open it, I only saw the beginning, Notary. At that moment, our door lock quietly turned. The key turned cautiously, as if the person outside feared not the lock but those inside. Marcus gave me a short, businesslike glance and opened the door himself. On the threshold stood Roger with a small travel bag. His face gray, lips chapped. He stepped forward and froze. Behind my shoulders, the kitchen. On the table, the folder, my blue pen on top, the recorder, and the flash drive with the red stripe. "I'll take my things," he exhaled without looking up, "and leave the keys." "Take only what's yours," I said calmly. "Documents, clothes, the rest through the lawyer. We'll change the lock tomorrow." He nodded, went into the bedroom, rummaged through the drawers quietly, returned with the bag and a set of keys, placed them on the nightstand by the door, and suddenly lifted his eyes. His gaze didn't ask for forgiveness or delay. I didn't answer. He turned to Marcus, wanted to say something, but my son barely shook his head, and Roger left without slamming the door. That night, I finished the supply list, scheduled the work, and checked the accounts. In the morning, Marcus and I went to the lawyer, filed the lawsuit, attached photos, printouts, and audio. The lawyer, expressionless and dry, said, "We'll request protective measures. A ban on any actions with your property and business until the court decision." Later, George reported, "Request sent to the notary. Attempted transfer blocked." I thanked him and, for the first time in many days, breathed without a stab in my chest. The days began to feel like themselves again. At the bakery, the bell tinkled, the air smelled of starch and vanilla. People came in cautiously, as if afraid to meet my gaze, then smiled genuinely. "Hang in there, Linda, we're with you." Some left tips, others brought a small vase of flowers. Viola silently, without questions, washed trays and put on the kettle. The city hotel called on its own. "We want to increase the order for next week." I wrote it down, placed a clean form next to it, and thought that paper is patient. The main thing is that the soul remains patient too. Marcus moved in without a word, bringing a blanket, a couple of shirts, and a sad expression. In the mornings, he went off to his unit. In the evenings, he delivered invoices, half listening to me, but being there, that was enough. At dinner, he ate slowly, and one day asked, like when I was a kid, "Mom, make creme caramel on the weekend." "I'll help stir the caramel." "I will," I said. "Just don't burn it." Patience is needed here. On Sundays, I started going to church, sitting in silence, asking for nothing, just listening to how the air breathed in the dome. In the evenings, community center, cooking club. Women my age shared recipes and gossip, laughing quietly. Someone would say, "Roger, your caramel is the smoothest. Share the secret." I'd smile and answer, "The secret is simple, stay close and don't rush." The court proceeded at its own pace. Roger and Catherine tried to delay with requests for certificates or rescheduling, but the audio, printouts, and testimony all fell neatly onto one shelf. Protective measures were approved quickly, and no foreign hands reached for my cash register anymore. One day in the courthouse corridor, we passed each other at a distance of 3 steps. He wanted to speak, opened his mouth, then closed it. I walked past, not out of pride, but because there was nothing left to say. The video shot in the yard circulated in local chats for a while. Then people got bored. The city moved on. So did I. Every morning, I started the dough, checked the ovens, reviewed the order list, and my heart beat steadily like a metronome, not for the places, but for the work itself. Marcus came home late, sometimes sitting on the chair by the door, taking off his boots in silence. And I stayed quiet too, because everyone has their grief, and everyone has their own way to keep it from spilling over. One evening, he came in with a bag of apples, took off his jacket at the door, and casually said, "Mom, I'll stay with you for a long time. I feel calm here." I nodded. "Stay." The house is big, one oven, plenty of work for both of us. He looked out the window, where the street lamp was already lit, and for the first time in a long while, he smiled without effort. The divorce was finalized without drama. Paper, stamp, a few dry phrases. I stepped outside. November was clear and cold, the air like glass. I bought 2 teas in cardboard cups from the nearby stall, brought one to Viola. We sat in the kitchen, listening to the quiet burble of the samovar. "Well, that's it," she said. "Yes," I replied. "That's it." It wasn't a victory. It was a period, after which a normal sentence begins. The moral of my story is simple: like yeast, protect what's yours. And boundaries are yours too. No one, not even the closest, has the right to cross them with dirty boots. You can carry bags of flour for 40 years, and still, one day, you'll have to say, "I'm not continuing," and go on by yourself. Since then, my life has become quieter. At the bakery, the bell rings louder. The air at home is cleaner. In the evenings, Marcus and I slice apples, argue about cinnamon and vanilla. Sometimes we stay silent, and that, too, is a conversation. On Sundays, I take out the mold for creme caramel, heat the sugar to the perfect amber, and realize my hands no longer tremble. This is not a fairy tale or a triumph. It's simply a new chapter, where I am again the mistress of my kitchen and my life. And if there is loneliness, it is not emptiness but order. Everything is in its place. The door locks from the inside, the bell rings outside, and people come in for bread. That is enough to live.